Hello everybody, I'm Michael Brown from Montgomery College Television, and I'm going to be your moderator today. We're on the Rockville campus in the brand new Science Center, room 152, and Dr. Pollard is very excited to be hosting her second town hall of this academic year. Now, as always, if you're watching online and you're nearby, come on over and join us. We would love to have you here in the room with us. Now, my main job is to make sure that Dr. Pollard stays focused on all of your questions today, but I want to urge everyone, particularly everyone in this room, to ask questions, make comments, take things in a different direction if you want. This is your town hall, and Dr. Pollard and I are looking forward to a very lively discussion today. Now, again, if you are watching online, you can email your questions to Montgomery Town Hall at montgomerycollege.edu, and we're going to try to get to as many of your questions as we can during the hour's time that we have today. You can help me out by keeping your questions brief. And finally, whether you're here in the room or you're watching online, please make sure you identify yourself before you ask your question. So without further ado, here's Dr. Pollard.
Well, good morning, everyone. How y'all doing? Good morning. Glad to have you here. Looking forward to today's conversation. I think we've already received a little bit over half a dozen questions online, some of which I have responses to based on folks sending to ahead of time. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time up front talking because I want to get to opportunities for us to interact and talk in a town hall setting. What I do want to do is acknowledge, I see Ray Gilmer here in the front. He's our new Vice President of Communications. I think as right now, this is day 3 or 4, depending on if you count orientation or not. So he's meeting lots of new people. Very happy to see him here. Want to give a big shout out of congratulations also to Dr. Deborah Bright, who has stepped into a new role permanently. Student Life Director here at the Rockville campus. So we're very happy to have her in that capacity. And if anybody else just wanted to share that. Lots of things happening. We've had some great initiatives that continue to evolve. Our work around closing the achievement gap. We've had some great conversations with faculty, staff, and students this month the board will be having around these issues. I know that the task force is working diligently under the leadership of some exceptional folks who are doing some good work there. And then last night at my President's Roundtable, we actually engaged some business leaders around these issues. Very interesting to hear their perspectives. Great takeaway about mentoring. I thought that was one of the big takeaways I left with. You all have already heard a lot about the 100-day report. Want to thank Academic Affairs for that work that they've done in that regard. And then the Innovation Forum. Samantha and Tacey, they aren't here today, but really I think had an excellent first start to our Innovation Forum and the work that we're doing to really talk about innovation and make it the heart song, I think, of what the institution does. Last week, the Montgomery County Council received a report from the Office of Legislative Oversight regarding developmental education. There will be lots of conversations about that, including a work session a few weeks from now. Please keep your eyes and ears peeled to that because I think it's going to continue to be a topic of great discussion within the county that affects so many of us within the institution. And I'll also share with you that we are continuing to look at communications. We're going to have expanded communications audit that we're doing regarding leadership of that and how we're going to talk and message things. So you'll see some work coming out about that. I think that there's another survey on November 11th that'll be coming out about that that's really looking at how we can engage on a broad perspective the institution about how we advance our brand, how we talk about the institution, and more importantly, what messages are resonating and what messages are not. So that'll be coming out fairly soon. Want to thank Professor Joe Nick and the Athenaeum Symposium. Had a great time. Earlier this week, we had a speaker who was talking about the stories of women who returned from war. Powerful. There's a documentary that's going to be coming out about that at that time. Hey, Foundation, y'all raising a lot of money right now. 1.5 million $1.5 million has been raised. That's a 119% increase over this point last year. This is money for student scholarships, and we're advancing the college's campaign. Very excited about that. Athletics, I'm going to end on that note and turn it over to you. Pretty exciting. Men's soccer. Hello. So looking at my notes here, they went on a 15-game winning streak. They posted an 18-2-1 record as a result of that. They are the Region 20 champions for the third season in a row. Yes. They will be moving on to the divisions and nationals, actually. Yes. So I'm looking for some partying to happen very soon in that space. Women's volleyball also had a great season. They went on to win the Region 20 championship for the second year in a row. Very exciting. And women's soccer made it to the Region 20 championship game, but fell just short of advancing, but we're celebrating it. That's pretty exciting about that. So these are things that are happening, but that's enough of me talking. Let me turn it over to Michael so we can get some things going.
All right, looks like we're going to start with an online question, and this was a pretty popular issue. We heard from 3 separate people about this.
I told y'all.
Judith Leap from Germantown, Amanda Stroud from Germantown, and I'm going to read the question from Julie Foster.
Okay.
And it's kind of a lengthy question.
That's all right, I can follow. Let me close my eyes.
All right, she says, I was disappointed to hear that there would not be an employee engagement survey conducted in October. Over the past several years, there have been many who have worked hard to ensure that the collective voices of our employees were heard. These voices have reinforced the many great things that would happen every day at MC, but they have also served to shine a light in areas where we could improve. There have been many great recommendations made and improvements implemented as a result of the Employee Engagement Survey. The decision to conduct the survey every 2 years was put in place to allow time to implement some of the recommendations that have college-wide impact. But I hope that this is not proven to diminish the commitment to measuring and analyzing our employee engagement. You yourself elected to use Employee Engagement Survey results as part of the performance canvas used to assess our attainment of our strategic plan. What are the plans for the Employee Engagement Survey moving forward? We are not the kind of institution, nor are you the kind of leader that stops asking the questions for fear of the answers.
So let me tell, it's interesting, I can remember my, I want to say 12th grade English teacher. We were talking about the 7 universal themes of American literature. He kind of lays out the 7 themes. And then somewhere along in the course, he talked about the fact that for every text, there's a pretext, there's a subtext, there's a context, and as a reader, you have to understand all of that in order to really analyze the text at hand. So Julie, we want to talk offline because I'm feeling some kind of way about that question. So that's just me, and I want to get a bigger picture about the context of that question. But let me answer that in a very direct way. We had a series of organizational changes that occurred over the summer. In fact, many people no longer have the supervisor that they had when they left June 30th and they came back July 1. It did not seem to me to be an authentic way of approaching the assessment by putting this out in October of this year. When people have new supervisors that they may have started working with July or August or September, and as a result of that, their assessments, I think, would not be, in the true character of what the intent of the engagement survey was. We were prepared to deploy it. To be very clear, there was no intent not to deploy the survey. HR STEM asked me about that. I think Dr. Warwick said we're prepared to do it. I said, well, let's hold up. I said, how can we implement a survey, to be quite frank, where people are now asked to look at and offer feedback in a way that they may not even know? They've only worked with somebody for a couple of months. A whole department has changed. I thought it would be more effective, and I'm owning this. So if anybody wants to know, the leader in this made the decision to delay the survey until January of this year, January of next year, 2015. I thought that gave us an opportunity to be about 6 months into the process, and as a result of that, it would allow us to be able to be very thoughtful and reflective about the responses. So I will apologize to the fact that it may not have been communicated effectively, and for that, I can only own so much. So for that part, I'll say if it wasn't communicated effectively, deeply apologetic about that. But very clearly, the idea was that we wanted to have a fair assessment, one that was authentic, one that actually had meaning, versus simply putting something out there because we've been doing it every other year or have been doing it for the last couple of years. The engagement group that worked on this survey for a number of years, they did agree that we should do it every 2 years because, as a matter of fact, it takes time to create cultural change. The reality about that of assessing every year and not looking at the outcomes wouldn't have been effective. So that was the intent behind it. To be very clear, you are correct. This is not an institution that walks away from asking difficult questions, and I think you all know me well enough to know as a leader that I relish difficult conversations. So thank you very much for that. And Ms. Julie, let's talk offline.
All right, we have a question here in the room.
Okay, Judy Ackerman. First of all, welcome to the Rockville campus. We're delighted to be hosting this. You mentioned the Office of Legislative Oversight report that just came out, and they cited a lot of wonderful practices that we are in the middle of starting with respect to developmental education. If you could dream and had unlimited resources, what would be on your wish list of new things that we could be doing here that may not be on the formal list of practices, but we'd like to try and see whether we can be a leader?
That's a good, thank you, Judy, for that, Dr. Ackerman. It was interesting in that the OLO in their report, I believe, identified 14 promising practices based on what the literature is telling us about how developmental education is being taught in this country. 13 of them we were doing already at Montgomery College. We are in some process of having implemented them or in the process of implementing them. And I think that's something we need to take great pride in. We are on the cutting edge of so many things. When I talk to students, and a matter of fact, I just had a group of students in my office last week, and we spent about 2 hours together talking about their experiences. They talked to me about a couple of things I thought would be very interesting. They spent a lot of time talking about supplemental instruction, as I grew up calling it, peer instruction. They started thinking, are there ways in which we can incent students to help other students who are struggling in certain areas? Could we have and pay students who are doing well and are in advanced math courses and partner and coach and assist on a one-to-one or a small basis with students who are in developmental education? I thought, what a brilliant idea, because oftentimes we know working one-on-one. So if I had my dream, because part of what I want to do is I think so many of our students are hustling hard and they're working jobs, many jobs, but they're away from campus. And what the literature tells us, we can keep them on campus, they have a greater opportunity for success. So if it would be thoughtful, wouldn't it be neat if we could create all kinds of work-based relationships where students are working with each other in developmental education? We're already doing a lot, I think, in the accelerated programming. I like to see more of that happening. I think I'd love to see more weekend and evening tutoring. Our students have talked a lot about that in our libraries. I think we have to have a substantive conversation about whether or not what math is appropriate. This is something as a state conversation. The whole college calculus, should that be the level of math that's needed to earn a degree? What does that actually mean? Those are some things I would be asking. The other thing is I would love to see a campaign where we actually ask students. You know, I'm very struck by some of the work that's happening with the CTAC group. They're implementing about having and asking students about the achievement gap. I think it'd be really interesting for us to engage students more and find out. I bet they tell us about technology, ways in which we could connect with them. You know, I think about every time if I haven't been to certain websites, I'll get, we haven't seen you in a little while. Wouldn't it be neat to have those same types of interactions with students? But I think if I had money, I'd sit down and talk to every developmental education student at Montgomery College and ask them what they need to be successful. Thank you.
All right, we have a question here in the room. This young man.
Hi, Dr. Pollard. Ben Holmes, MC Advocate, Student News.
Hi, Ben.
Hi. So we had a few students approach us regarding, I'm sure you're aware of the policy that has students show their MC ID with the sticker to get on the ride-on buses for free.
Sure.
We've had a number of students say that in the Seneca Highway and Gaithersburg areas, there's been a number of buses that don't accept that. One, do you know anything about this happening and for ride-on buses? And two, how much communication would you say MC administration has with the Departments of Transportation?
Excellent question, Ben. One, going to your first one, I knew nothing about this. This is the first I've heard of it. So this is a breaking news that the president is first time hearing about this. And if anybody else knows about it and hasn't told me, that's a problem. So we need to know that. As much money as we pay to ride on, I'm going to be very concerned about the fact that our students are not being accepted, and if that's a training issue, if that's an awareness issue, we can certainly go and do some work with that. We spend quite a bit of time. We have an excellent team that spends time quite frequently with Ride On as we are, one, negotiating our budgets for the next year, what payment we'll be making to them as we talk about usage, routes. I'm oftentimes calling our facilities people to talk about how can we help Ride On as they move through our campuses, make sure that they are moving cautiously as it relates to our students who are running back and forth. So there is an opportunity for us to enhance communication, but we do talk with them frequently. I don't know how frequently. Do you know, Dr. Yates? So sometimes weekly. So this is news to me about that particular corridor, but I can guarantee you I will be asking some questions of that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Okay, we have another question from the room.
Hello, Dr. Pollard, Dean
How
Schleicher.
are you, Dean?
5 days ago, a college-wide email was sent out. It has since generated 35 reply emails and counting. What can be done to prevent this from happening again?
Woo, Dean. So here's the part. You weren't in here when we walked in because I hadn't looked at my email. I've been in a couple meetings this morning, and I looked back and I see one more. Please take me off the list. I said, now do you realize if you send reply all, you're creating more email? We've actually had more emails saying take me off the list than the original reply to the message, right? So there is, I think, an important opportunity here, and there's several. One is that we need to have opportunities to have deep discussions. I actually thought. I can't remember the faculty member who actually wrote a response back about her experience, and that I thought that was so, Kenji, that was so well crafted, very thoughtful, and tried to place a bow on the issue, right? And then we kind of kept going on and on and on. So we do have an interesting policy that is being proposed around this, because one is that people already, I don't know about you all, but if I look at my inbox at any given time, Amy Crowley's always telling me to check my email more. This is an issue. I have an email issue, but part of it is because if I open it up right now, I probably have 1,500 emails. Half of them are reply, please take me off the list. Please take me off the list, right? So we do have some issues about that. I don't know if one of you all want to speak to this.
Sure.
I don't know if y'all said.
Since it's raised third day, I'll take it.
Thank you.
So we just finished a communications audit with Claris Communications. This was a very prevalent issue.
Oh.
Oh, I get to hold it. This is great. Claris Communications noted that we need to, with college-wide communications, we need to have a limited amount of users, but not make it so tough for people to communicate out college-wide. We'll have a policy and procedure that we've already drafted. We were waiting for Ray's arrival to be able to look at it holistically. Same thing holds true with what we're going to do with social media standards, with as well as college-wide email standards. So you can look for those to go through the governance process probably around December, January, because obviously this is an important thing to get addressed now.
So related to that, let's all make a pact. Tell 5 people do not reply all and ask to be taken off the list. Now, if you're writing a substantive response to something, and don't get me wrong, this is a part of an academic community. There's a healthiness in the discourse, right? But to tell, let's just stop, y'all. I promise I almost wrote back, we would take everybody off the list. I almost thought about it, but thought that wouldn't go over so well. So let's do that, Dan. Let's me and you, let's make a pact right here. What's with the orange dude? Oh my God. Oh my gosh. Okay.
All right, we have a question right here.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Richard Foster. I have a question for part-time faculty compensation.
Sure.
I've been teaching here since 2012, and when I started, I had another job. I was an adjunct or a part-time person who had another professional obligation, and so I was fairly relaxed about my salary. Mm-hmm. After 12 years, I no longer feel that way. Mm-hmm. There's a national crisis with adjunct faculty, part-time faculty, teaching half of the courses in some universities. And they may have started out as an add-on, as the adjunct term suggests, mm-hmm. but they become an integral part of the faculty of many institutions, including this one. And Montgomery College has a special orientation and mission to help the disadvantaged, the minorities, and the low-income mm-hmm.
segments
of our population, making college education affordable.
Sure.
I include myself amongst the low-income people,
mm-hmm.
although I have a graduate degree from an Ivy League university.
Mm-hmm.
I am still earning close to what a manager at McDonald's would earn. I can teach 7 courses in a year. I earn $16,000. This is something that has to be changed to make Montgomery College right and decent and honest and forthright, and for the mission to include people who are part of the mission but who are excluded from the compensation. that they deserve. We have a union. Things are moving in some ways positively, but I want to know if you as a president feel compelled to do the right thing for us.
So I would offer that I have done the right thing for you, and I think I try to do that for all employees. As you would describe, the adjunct faculty issue is a national one, and it's not one that's going to be solved easily. It goes back and it predates my even arrival on this earth, because the issue of this is a very significant one. Higher education, in lots of ways, recognize the value that it has to have a full-time employee be a part of the organization and to have faculty who are developing curriculum, who are working with students, who are advancing the mission of the institution and being very intrusive, hopefully, in the lives of students. And what the history would tell us about adjunct faculty is that adjunct faculty were primarily used for two ways when it started, and I think you alluded to in your message. One was the idea that it would help add currency and relevancy to the curriculum by bringing people who were employed in other sectors and having them come and work for us in a part-time capacity to bring that relevancy and currency and flexibility to the schedule. And what has happened, as you would describe, is that over time, because there has been an underinvestment in higher education by the public sector, we have had to increase the numbers of part-time faculty who are hired versus that who have been a full-time faculty. This institution, I would offer to you, has been extremely progressive and thoughtful in this. We have the best paid adjunct faculty in community colleges in the state. Doesn't mean that we are meeting where we want to be and where in an ideal world we would be. Probably not. As Dr. Ackerman asked me earlier, if I had all the money and the opportunity to do that, I'd ask some very different things about how we do the work. But we negotiated a contract last year with our adjunct faculty. We made significant impact and gains in the salaries that we pay adjunct faculty. Is there work still to be done? I would offer yes. If you were to talk to our full-time faculty who are negotiating right now, they would say there's work to be done. If we talk to our staff, they would say there's work to be done. And dare say our administrators in the room, including your president, will say there's still work to be done. But there is work to be done. And I think part of what we have to do and what I would offer is that there needs to be a broader national conversation about this. I think there needs to be a broader state conversation about this. And at the end of the day, it has to have a conversation about policy. And we have to have a conversation about what is the role of faculty, what is the public's investment in higher education, and how will they allow us to do what we want to do. But going to the point of your question, I have been articulate about these issues. I have sat with adjunct faculty and talked about strategies of how to talk about these issues nationally and at the local level. And more importantly, I have empowered our team on behalf of the board to make the investments that we have. We'd like to do more, but I think we've tried to do the best we can at this point. And I appreciate your question. Yes, sir.
All right, we have an online question from Jill Kronstadt, Associate Professor of English. She says, first, in light of this week's election results in Maryland, what do you anticipate the MC funding situation will look like under a Republican administration?
Well, let's talk about the facts, right? That's all I can do is talk about the facts. So thank you, Jill, for the question. One, we know that the platform of the governor-elect was that he was going to reduce taxes. We know that the taxes, if they are reduced at the state level, that means there will be less revenue coming into the county. And as a result of that, there will be less revenue coming to the college. That's the first thing. We know that to be true. The other thing we know to be true is that if the county has to also continue to make the investments and commitments in the K-12 space that they have articulated a need to, including a capital budget. Those of you who've been watching the newspaper are very aggressive based on the growth in Montgomery County. This is a big issue. The other thing that I think is interesting now is that the Republican House and the General Assembly also now has enough votes to block any efforts by the Democrats to overcome a veto. So there is an interesting dynamic that is at play here. And going to Jill's question, I don't know. I would tell you there was a long night, Tuesday night. All day I went into a meeting yesterday, and one of the conversations we immediately had is what is the impact at the state level? What is the impact at the local level? There's a lot of folks scrambling. I will tell you that very clearly. And you know, if you look at Dr. Warmack right about now, she's getting some dark rings under her eyes because all of these things, if you compound this changing environment here, you compound it with the fact that we've had a decrease in enrollment. And this is now those people who wonder if the economy is getting any better, it is, because we folks are going to work. They're not coming to college. So you've got a decrease in enrollment. We have a commitment to do the best we can to compensate employees. And then you add on top of that, we have we just open up new buildings. Right? How much does that building cost, the Germantown campus?
Almost 90 million.
90 million. How many new staff we had to put in the building itself? 20. That's just to keep it clean, to keep the building working, keep the lights on. We just opened this new building here last year. You know, we've made some commitments. And then don't add to the fact that insurance costs, and we have bond obligations. So there's a whole lot going on, Miss Jill. So I'm trying to keep young. So I'm gonna let Dr. Warmack worry for a little while. She gets to worry through the month of November. Then December I get to worry. And I'm just gonna let y'all a little secret. If y'all see Susan Madden, just walk gently around her. Just walk gently, give her a wide berth, because right about now she is freaking out. Right? Okay, thank you, Jill. That was a great question. Yes, sir.
Dr. Pollard again.
Hi, Ben.
Hi. Students have another question.
I like student questions.
Regarding sort of piggybacking off of what she said about the elections recently. So some students can vote on campus, some are not old enough to vote or can't vote just yet. Most questions we get when talking to students are financial aid. Again, you said cultural changes take a while to project, but in regards to financial aid, is there anything that might be changing there as far as logistics with financial aid or availability or rising costs or decrease?
Well, we know that the costs are increasing. For that, the board has not made a conversation, has not entertained yet the issue of tuition, which is, I know, the first issue the students think about. As you can know, this current fiscal year, there was a $3 increase per credit hour. The year before that, the board made a decision not to increase tuition, which I applaud them on that. I don't know if that's sustainable in this year. We are looking at the budget projections right now. Just in our major known commitments are fairly significant, just in terms of compensation, keeping the buildings open, insurance costs, whatever the case may be. I think that was a $12 or $13 million, 14, so million here, million there. $14 million increase we already know is coming down the pike, let alone anything to advance our strategic plan. So we have some unique challenges of that. We know that the federal government is still having lots of conversations about federal financial aid and what qualifies for that. I will say our board was courageous last year. They dedicated more money to student scholarships. So I was very excited about that. And they have challenged me as a president to ensure that I am bringing in a budget that is reasonable, that's sustainable, and we have to have a substantive conversation about revenue. Revenue is the issue. You know, I'm not an accountant, but my sister is, and my sister tells me, she said, you know, every time I call about a financial problem in the college or talk, I said, what do you think? She said, baby, there's only two ways you can deal with this: increase revenues and decrease expenses. That's the only thing. At the end of the day, that's all it comes down to. As an organization, if we're going to increase our expenditures, we got to generate more revenue. And our revenue sources are very few, very few. Great question, Ben. Thank you. Foundation. Yeah, but you know, Mikey wants to add on to this. Because our foundation is doing something to raise money, more money for scholarships. And we'll come right back to your question.
So as Dr. Pollard mentioned in the beginning, we've raised $1.5 million so far this year. In the past 2 years, we've raised over $6.6 million, with about 90% of that money for scholarships. We're in the midst of a $30 million campaign, with about 80% of that going towards scholarships. And we're going to be looking to expand the scholarships we're doing for the ACES program. We're looking to create an initiative called MC Promise, where we can promise somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 to 800 more students a scholarship every year. But we got to make sure that the model we create is sustainable. So we're actually going out to a conference in November where other municipalities have run these scholarship promises so that we can learn the best practices and run it the right way for our county.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a question back there, and I'll be there in a second.
We don't like dead space, so I'll just talk for a minute, make sure he gets to you.
Okay, good morning, Dr.
Good morning.
Pollard. I'm Alonzo Smith,
Yes.
and I teach in the History Political Science Department. And after 40 years of teaching, this is my last semester, so I'm saying goodbye. I started in 1974, and I've taught at historically black colleges in the South. I've taught in California. I've taught in state universities and private institutions. And I can say, in all sincerity, without any reservations whatsoever that, excuse me, this is the best teaching job I've ever had in my entire life. It's because of the institutional culture, it's because of the administration, it's because of the quality of our students. I'm not going to take your time. If you want to come and see me, I could tell you for 3 hours why this is such a good place to work. But I have a concern. My termination, because it's a technical termination, because I hope to come back and teach part-time,
Sure.
will leave a vacancy in the history department. And I teach African and African American history. So a question has arisen as to exactly how this vacancy is going to be filled. And I know that under the new restructuring, the procedures for filling vacancies have changed. So a question has come up as to whether the vacancy that I'm leaving in Rockville will be transferred to Germantown. And so I'd like to throw out a question for consideration, and that is, given I teach African history, I teach United States history, I teach history of African Americans. Given our commitment, a stated commitment to globalization, to internationalizing our curriculum, to diversifying our curriculum to our diverse student, wouldn't it make sense to have someone who does what I do here at Rockville, as well as another person who does what I do at Germantown? That's my question.
I certainly would. And the short answer to the question is yes. But as we often know, the short answers are probably the most efficient ones, right? There is a process that we use internally here within the institution to decide how positions are going to be looked and assigned. In short, it is first discussed by the deans, who look at enrollment trends, look at availability of faculty, they look at placement and so forth, and then they try to figure out where a position should be. They then make a recommendation to the senior vice president. I do know that we have planned 5 faculty positions to be requested in the new budget. These are 5 new faculty positions in addition to several replacements. I don't know about yours specifically, and what I can do is ask Dr. Rye to get back to me and give some analysis of that. I don't know directly, and I apologize for not having that information. But what I also want to do is just tell you, you represent something truly magical in this institution. The fact that we have had faculty and staff and administrators who have spent significant portions of their professional life dedicated to the mission of this college and advancing it. I know for a fact that those of us who've been coming in now 4, 5, 3 days into the job, we stand on your shoulders. So thank you for what you've done, and thank you for the students.
All right, we're going to take part 2 of Jill Kronstadt's two questions.
She
had
had
2 questions.
All right.
2 for the price of 1. Secondly, thank you for your focus on employees this year. Recently, I've heard you talk about making MC a destination employer. Are there details of that, of what you envision, that you can share?
Yeah. You know what I think is interesting about this? We've been spending, there's a perfect storm that's been arising right now in higher education. We have, for the first time in history, the mass exodus of employees, 40 years, 30 years or more, leaving the institution at the time when there are not enough people to move into those roles. In addition to that, there's going to be mass competition for those positions. And one of the things that we know, unlike places that make widgets and produce things, we are about the education business, and our business is based on the people who are employed here. So anybody know what percentage, and don't you answer, or you, or anybody who knows the answer off the top of their head, what percentage of our budget is spent on personnel and people? 90, 60, 80, 85? Anybody else want to guess?
18 over 24.
18 over 24?
Times 100, of course.
I like that. Mr. Preston, how much? 80%. 80% of our budget is people. So, and that number is going up, as a matter of fact. So as a result of that, we have to be thinking about how as an institution, we not only attract the talent, that we need to position the college for the future? How do we maintain the talent that we have to position the college for the future? And how do we make sure the employees are engaged? So going to the question at the top of the hour, one of the things we learned very quickly when I stepped in, we have a lot of wonderfully talented people within the organization, but the college had underinvested in training and development. We're significantly increasing that. The organization has spent less time thinking about how we onboard employees. We're starting to think about that. We spent less time, I think, as an organization thinking about how people transition out of the organization and also how people can transition within the organization. So part of that, Jill, has been looking at how we restructure our HR STEM area to do that work and to put people responsibly in those roles. Structurally, we have a lot of work to be done. There's infrastructure work that has to be done. There's communication has to be done. And I would also offer to you that we also have a group of people who are working on this. We have an employee task force. Matter of fact, they gave me some talking points in this. Let me look. From now on, I need bullets, y'all. My eyes are starting to change. Work group has been formed to discuss and make recommendations regarding an employee code of conduct. This was something that actually came out of recommendations from our ombuds about clarifying the expectations about how we communicate and work within an organization. And then we're also trying to infuse some fun activities. Just last month we had the college-wide picnic. We brought that back to being after, I think it went dormant for a few years. This is our second year. We had over 800 registered, there was more than that there, college employees and their families. Don't tell the fire marshal. So I think it's a process. So what I would offer, Jill, thank you for that. I think we want to attract the best talent that position this college for the best for the future. We know the world is changing rapidly, and in a higher education space, it is changing more rapidly than we can even get our head around. So part of that is to begin to think about how we are positioned as an organization. And then the last thing is that if you have ideas about this, feel free to send those in, talk about them. It isn't a done product. It's something that we're trying to roll out and have greater emphasis about how we treat each other. With that, I am going to say one thing. I've had a number of people talk to me about the need for us to look at civility within this organization. And I was telling Ray earlier, I'm a little girl from the south side of Chicago, so I believe in being a straight shooter. Part of that means you need to sit down and have conversations with people. I have grown tired of the people who talk around people. I've grown tired of people, people don't realize, going to your question, Dean, people, when you send an email, y'all need to go look at the bottom of the email sometimes, right? Because sometimes you pick a fight without even realizing what was going on that got this whole issue started. The other thing is I find out I get copied on a lot of stuff that people don't know I've been copied on. So the other day, what I did, I had somebody, it was an interesting conversation that was going on amongst some employees, and to be quite frank, it got a little ugly, I thought. And, and I'm not one to run away from a fight, but I kind of said, this is wrong. So I just kind of picked up the phone, and I called this employee, and I said, hey, how's it going? I said, how you doing, Dr. Pollard? I'm doing good. I said, I understand you've got some issues right here. Oh, you know about that? I said, I do. And I said, I'm reading this email, and I said, I'm not inserting myself into it because it's like 4 or 5 people away from me. I said, but I think as an institution, wouldn't it be a better way to express this concern? You're right. You're right about that. Hung up, and do you know another email went out and said, I apologize for how I did that. And I thought, now I shouldn't have to do that. And that just happened, I got copied on one of the ones I happened to read. There is a point here about how we should talk to each other, how we treat each other with dignity, respect, and how we have to learn how to disagree. It's okay to disagree with each other. That's the beautiful part of being an academic community. We come from a seasoned and rational place to do that. But you know what? Don't shoot people with words. It ain't how we have to do it. We treat people with respect. So that's my little thing. I might start a new thing on this civility thing, because it's sending me over the edge, especially when I hear people who are of service to this organization, who care about it deeply, who've been here for 40 years or 4 days, talk about the fact that, what's going on about how we treat each other, especially in this place as people are supposed to be about customer service. Don't let me go there, right? So don't let me walk past another window, or if I walk into an office and people don't look up. That's another pet peeve of mine. Acknowledge somebody, see them. All right, I'm done. I'm sorry, I got on a little tangent.
All right, we have a question here in the front row.
My name's Blaine Campbell. Yeah, it's a beautiful color.
It is beautiful. It It's beautiful.
I'm a student here at Montgomery College. I'd just like to thank the foundation for giving me a scholarship and letting me get more involved on campus.
Awesome. All right.
I had a quick question about the CTAG and peer networking.
Yeah.
I'm originally from Florida. I've had 3 of my friends come up here just to attend college and have that peer network. If other students get out-of-state students to come here, would it ever be possible to grant them in-state tuition instead of waiting to establish residency?
No.
No?
No. Thank you for asking that question. There is a legal requirements under the Maryland, the Code of Regulations for the state of Maryland, whatever, some long name, COMAR, that has very clear dictates about how residency is established, but also more importantly, how as an institution, what our responsibilities are in that. There are ways in which that can be expedited based on their relationship with a business as well. So I will ask Melissa Gregory if she can get me some information about that, because there are some ways that can help facilitate a student in that process, but that process we can't jump around too easily. Thank you for that, and thank you for the kudos.
Another question from the front row.
Yay.
Hi, I'm Atul Roy. I teach mathematics
Hello, Atul.
right here in this building.
Hey, you like this building?
I love it.
Good.
I love it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and I will echo Dr. Alfonso that 37 plus years I've been teaching. This is the best teaching position. Again.
Awesome.
Okay, this is. So, and I would thank you for listening to me. 2 years ago, I asked for a shuttle. You gave us a limo to Tacoma Park. I hope it's not, I hope it's not taken away. Now, going to just your response on the question that, we will attract the best talent, and that's why even the U.S. government has it on its list. That is, if you are hiring somebody for a teaching position and the person is not an immigrant here yet, the process is much easier than the other places for a teaching position. And in this very building, there are at least, there are many people who we can feel proud of, who the college is sponsored to. But I'm afraid the process has been discontinued. That is, we don't sponsor, people for green card anymore. Is that right?
I don't know that.
Oh, you don't know that?
No, I don't know that. So let me do some research on that.
Okay.
I'm unfamiliar. One, I'm unfamiliar with what we used to do in order to say that. I'm also unfamiliar with what we don't do. Now, I do know we've had some situations of late. One in particular that was particularly problematic for lots of reasons that I can't speak of here. But let me go and do some work. I don't know exactly what the college's position has been prior to my arrival and subsequent to my arrival, even in the last couple of years. I need to look at that.
Okay,
Thank you for that question. Somebody needs to, Dr. Scott, can you remind me of that? Thank you.
All right, our next question is an online question.
Oh, boy.
Montgomery College has a new Innovation Works. Would MC consider being innovative in helping employees who sit at a computer all day? A Mayo Clinic researcher immediately began working standing up as soon as he saw his own research about the effect of sitting all day. Sitting all day is the new smoking.
Yeah.
Would the college begin an initiative to get employees variable height stands for their computer monitors or standing desks for those who want them?
I have to look into that. Now, there are a couple of things, and I actually looked into one of those standing desks for me one time, and I didn't ask for it because it's fairly cost prohibitive. So I don't know what that, I have to look, realistically, I don't know if it's feasible for us to put that into a capital budget request right now. Look at Janet, no. But I do think that there are ways in which we can look at other wellness activities. For a while there, I remember probably about 7 years ago, everybody was on those balls. You walk in everybody's office, they weeble wobble, work on your core. So, we did see a lot of that, and I think we want to spend time thinking about that. But we have a very an excellent wellness program here at the institution that allows opportunities for wellness activities. We have ergonomics area that can come in and look at your area ergonomically as an employee. We're trying to expand our work in that area. I don't know, who's that who asked that question? Who was that who asked the question?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That was Nancy Nyland.
Nancy, I just want to say, Nancy, I don't know how feasible it is to do that right now. It's something that we can look into, but fiscally, I know it's a challenge. The other thing is also space. We had one of our trustees asked the other day about, student trustee asked about getting larger desks in the classrooms, which I think is a good point, and we've done some of that in some areas, but we also found out when you expand the furniture, guess what happens? You reduce the number of seats in the classroom. So we have to think about that in terms of our workstations as well. If you start to add some of these equipment, which is actually larger than a regular workstation, we might have some challenges. But I'm willing to look at it. I think it's a good idea. I'm trying to, but you know what? Actually, I think I should put one of these up in the conference room because I can guarantee you we'd have shorter meetings if we all had to stand up. I'm a PC. Matter of fact, everybody, you can get right now and just bust a squat out. You'd be feeling real good. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
All right, we have a question right here.
Good morning, Dr. Pollard
Good
and
morning.
MC family. I'm Lisa White. I work for the foundation.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
The foundation stacked the room today or something?
Yeah. My daughter, she has a learning disability. She's an adult, and she has tried on numerous occasions to take the acuplacer, and she is having problems taking that. She wanted me to address someone, so now that I'm here, she says that if we could come up with something to assist her. She said even at the MVA, they have like the little where her learning disability is reading. Okay, and
So an audio component to that.
So she said if someone could sit there with her to help her read the acuplacer, go over it. If they could have like the earphones to read to her. She has tried on numerous occasions. She wants to attend here and get, further her education, and she actually does teach little children, and she has problems with reading.
Sure.
So she said if we could do something.
Well, let me do
about
two
that.
things. One is that I don't know specifically about what we do in that and what we're allowed to do about that, but what I can do is ask Dr. Brown, who's sitting directly in front of you, to get some additional information. And matter of fact, at the end of this, if you all can connect to find out what accommodations can be made. As an institution, we have an exceptional DSS program. They do outstanding work, and there are certain regulations that we have as an institution about what we can and can't do, but let's get some information. I don't know that off the top of my head, and I'll find out.
Okay,
Thank you, Lisa. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. All right, we'll go to another online question.
All right.
This one is from Amanda Stroud. She's a library assistant at the Germantown campus.
Hi, Amanda.
What would it take for staff to permanently have the entire week of spring break off?
Yeah, I know that's the other question I get every other day in my office. One is just kind of a way of history. What's interesting, we have the spring break off this year, and the reason we had spring off last year was a negotiated item between ASME and the college. That came as a result of several actions. First, when we had furloughs, the institution wanted to the extent possible, lessen some of the impact on employees by having a spring break off. And then I think we had another one where we did something like that as well, as a way of saying we're grateful to our employees for the work that they've done and try to offer that. And then ASME negotiated that, so we've had it for the last 2 years. What would it take? It is a negotiated item, so we have to have that conversation. We also have the conversation with the board. To be quite frank, they are the ones who make the final decisions regarding the calendar. And they are also the ones who have to be very thoughtful about the public perceptions about this, and also how does it affect our students and their access to the needs that they have. But the irony about this is that there are many of us who actually have to work during spring break, because there's something that typically happens even when the college is closed. The county executive releases his budget. So we spend a lot of time trying to get ready for that, and then also make decisions as a result of things that happen from that. So we have to figure out the healthy balance on that. And I need to go back and do some work on it. But thank you, Amanda, for the questions. I know there are lots of people who had jumped at their desk as soon as you said that.
All right, we have another online question.
Okay.
This one is from Karen Penn de Martinez,
Okay.
professor in computer science. More than 20% of MC students are Latino. Numbers of Latino students are growing, but only 4% of faculty are Latino, less for administrators. What initiatives are there to reach out to potential candidates and increase percentages?
You know, it's interesting. Last year, I had a whole conversation, it was a year and a half ago almost, with Dr. Scott when she was in Equity and Diversity to craft a diversity recruitment plan around these issues, because we recognize that our faculty and staff does not reflect the diversity of our students, plain and simple. And what the literature tells us is that while we can always strive to have equity in many different ways, it's important for our students to see people whose lives and experiences mirror their own. So we have to be very thoughtful about that. But the idea of simply recruiting candidates is insufficient. There are many things we have to look at in terms of that. One is the recruitment process itself, how we go about doing that work, how we connect with people, how we talk about the organization, how we make sure that it is a culture that people want to be a part of. Secondly, once people are here, how they experience the organization, what they experience when they're here, how they feel about that. And last but not least, which I think is an important one, how we make hiring decisions. So it is a complicated process. And one of the things people say, oh, this is a X program, HR issue. It's a president's office issue. It's a this issue. Really what it is, in my mind, it's a hiring issue, and it's a multi-complex systems issue that requires many people to be engaged in the conversation. So I have asked Dr. Warmack to work very deliberately on this. We have a unique opportunity within our organization. We do have, as we commented here, people who are transitioning out into retirement. And how do we look at those positions? And how do we design aggressive recruitment campaigns to make sure that we're talking about the institution in very different ways, that we're looking at the ways in which we talk about the My MC story and make sure everyone feels a part of that. But it also requires us to have very thoughtful conversation about our hiring once we're there. The hiring managers have to be a part of this. When I was at the College of Lake County, I'll never forget this. It was the mid-90s, and the college had a significant, at that time it was the D word, diversity initiative, where they were trying to diversify the faculty and staff. And what they did is they brought a group of faculty and staff together, primarily faculty, because that was the area we wanted to see the most grain in. They took the leadership and advocating with the other faculty about why this is important. Because y'all know where the dirty secret is? It's in the search committee process. Let's be real about this. We can go out and put an advertisement in Diverse magazine. We can go advertise at Ebony and Jet and every other place in the world that we can do. But the reality at the end of the day is how we spend time about what happens in that search committee. That's the dirty secret of hiring and diversifying faculty and staff. So we have to have those conversations about cultural competency as an institution. We have to have a conversation about making sure that all experiences are valued, and how we, even go to the day of what job description of requirements that we put on something. Those are all a part, it's a comprehensive plan. So that's part of what I've asked Dr. Warmack to sit down with. But I'm gonna tell you what, it ain't just Dr. Warmack's issue, it ain't just HR STEM issue, it's all of us who sit on the search committee, it's all of us who go out and talk about the institution, it's all of us who are in the process of making hiring decisions. We're all a part of that. And that's what I'm trying to focus on very deliberately. But it also means that those of us who are in these positions have to answer the questions. Right? So we can't just walk around not answering the questions. We got to answer the questions and respond to people. Even if we don't have a good answer yet, we're working on it. Y'all with me on that? All right, thank you.
All right, I think we have time for probably just one more question. I know, time flies when you're having fun.
Lord have mercy.
And we have a question right here in the front row.
Hi, Melissa.
Melissa Pace, MCTV. I'm happy to say that we've just hired a multicultural content producer within MCTV who is a Latina lady who will be starting in another week and a half, who's going to specifically focus on stories about our multicultural population of students and staff and faculty, and also to tell stories about those groups to those populations in the community so that they can become more aware of what we offer and hopefully come to work here too.
I appreciate that. And I think related to that, I think I also want to have very substantive conversation about our training within our organization and cultural. You know, it's interesting to me, my son, and I'll end on this, is 7, he goes to school, he's 2nd grade, and he came home the other day and he said, Mama, I think we should celebrate Diwali. And I said, we should? And he tells me all about Diwali and what we should be doing. And then he came home the other day and said, Mama, I'm not going to eat meat anymore. And I said, you aren't going to eat meat anymore? He said, well, such and such can't eat meat in his religion, and I don't think we should eat meat anymore. And I said, okay, we don't have to eat meat anymore. But here's the point of that, what I thought was something. the naturalness about cultural competency, that awareness to ask questions, that ability. You know, I went in to volunteer in this class one day, and they had a substitute, and the substitute was calling the names of the students, and she was saying all of their names of their native language. But that's not what he goes by. He goes by these are 6 and 7 year old, and the teacher would say, so it's, you know, Shishang, whatever, and he would say, no, he goes by Nathan, you know. But it was a very interesting to watch that in the classroom. So what I think is also important, we can recruit people here, we can bring them here, but if they get here and they work in an environment that is uncivil, ooh, yes, see, I brought it back. I didn't forget about that, right? They work in a place where we walk around places and we don't talk to each other. Right? They work in a place where well, let me stop before I get wound up. So that's the bigger issue. And that's not just for brown and black folks. That's for white folks. That's for disabled folks. That's for people who are coming from poverty and living in poverty. This is for all of us together. What does it mean to be a part of a community? Let's have that conversation. And once we get that part figured out, I'd be John Brown. There's something powerful that can happen. So I'm done. I know I went over. I'm sorry.
That's okay. We actually have a couple of minutes.
Shut it up. All right.
And I think we have enough time for you to maybe some brief reflections. We're almost finished with the fall semester, how things have been going.
So my favorite month of the year is November, and it's because I love Thanksgiving. I love Thanksgiving. I love the fact that some point in our cultural histories, whatever the reasons are, we decided to say thank you. So I always like to do this and say thank you. I want to say thank you to our students who every day remind us why we do this work. Whether it be, they remind us why we do this work. I want to thank you to our employees of this institution. Wherever you work and whatever you do, you're contributing to advancing this institution in ways that are changing lives each and every day. I want to thank you to those people who invest in us, whether it be through philanthropy or whether it be through the public sector and our taxpayers. Y'all realize we are a public institution. The fact that people choose to invest in us says something about the value and worth that we bring to this institution. And most importantly, I love our mission. I love what we do. So we are here. Our institution is about access. About access to higher education, regardless of who you are, where you come from. We recognize that education is not just a privilege, it's a right. And there's a public good to live in a community where people are well educated. So I thank you all for choosing to be here. As we get to this part of the semester, make sure y'all taking care of yourselves. And what else y'all got to start doing? Wash your hands. Wash your hands. I'm saying that because it's the flu bug is here. And if I get the flu this year from one of y'all, I'm going to be mad. Right? I'm going to be really, really mad. Wash your hands. Cough into your arms. Give people dap, but don't walk around, shaking hands. And I'm a hugger, so I'll hug on the side or something. But don't, wash your hands. Wash your hands. Number one issue, wash your hands and cough into here. Let's try to prevent a flu outbreak. Right? All right, I'm done.
Happy birthday, by the way.
Saturday.
Well, thank you, Dr. Pollard, and I want to thank everyone here in the room and online for participating in today's town hall. The next town hall is coming up in February, so keep an eye on Inside MC Online and also the President's Corner Monday message for all the details. So once again, for Dr. Pollard and everyone on the MCTV production crew, thank you so much for participating in today's town hall.